are joined by Destiny Huff, a late diagnosed autistic and ADHD mental health professional, licensed therapist, and non-attorney special education advocate. With over 15 years of experience in schools and mental health settings, Destiny brings both professional expertise and lived experiences as a mom of two neurodivergent learners with IEPs. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's get right into these questions because you really have so much that you share on your social media page that I feel like people can learn from. I know me as a person who's not very familiar with IEPs, if someone does ask me, I do refer them to your page because I'm like, this is who I feel is the expert, so I think you should check her out. So, what has it been like navigating the special education system as a Black family, and what challenges have stood out the most for you?
So, because we actually started this process in where my son was in a school that was a predominantly white school,
Mm-hmm.
and a predominantly white area because we were military, so not a lot of people have a choice anyway, but we really didn't have a choice in where he started. We immediately came across the openly niceties of like, oh, both parents seem involved in this or that. But it was the undertones of like
Mm-hmm.
the racism and stereotypes and things, and he was adultified very quickly, and it was very much like, oh, he's so smart, which means he knows better, which means he shouldn't be doing these things. And neither myself or him were diagnosed at the time, so it's my oldest
Uh-huh.
child that is autistic. So navigating it, my husband and I are both, I was a military child, he was a military child for a little bit, but our families are from the South. So we're
Mhm.
very familiar with racism, discrimination, stereotypes, bias. So that wasn't
Right.
really like, we were already like, okay, we're on alert for it. But up until that point, we hadn't experienced it to that level because the school was not a military affiliated school. They just had military learners. And our children always went to very diverse settings when they were in childcare.
Mhm.
So they always saw someone that looked like them and interacted with someone that looked like them. And so it was really different to come across it. And then my mother and sister are educators. Um, and my mother-in-law used to be in the school system. And so we very much were like, oh, we understand the plights of educators and things like that. And his educator was phenomenal. She was great, but administration was the barrier. So being a Black family in a predominantly white area, we were already on alert of like, okay, we don't know how this is going to tackle. It was during our current administration's last administration as well. So we were again on high alert. Um, but I feel like until you really go through it and you see the way it tears down your child, you're never really
Wow.
ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially right like now with the current administration that we're under, we're always on high alert every day. We're seeing something negative about autism and being autistic and being attacked online. So I definitely understand like that has to be a struggle, especially as a parent with neurodivergent learners. And thank you for sharing that with my audience. So has having a formal diagnosis changed the way you parent and show up for your children?
Yeah, I think being a mental health professional, I always say, and my husband always says, I kind of always had like a slight edge on how I view parenting. So my entire mental health career is based around working with children and adolescents anyway. So that's where my training was. And so I always came from the mindset of children are people. And so I already had a different mindset for parenting. My parents were young when they had me, my sister, so their approach was different from some of my peers' parents as well. So I already had that, but me and my son were very similar. And so a lot of times I would notice where there was this, I call it the ill intent perception. So this perception that he was being rude or doing something to hurt someone else's feelings. So for example, a kid drew a drawing and he was like, oh, this is a house. And my son was like, that's not a house. And the teacher was like, we told him that's not nice. And then he was like 4. And I was like, he was like, mommy, it wasn't a house. I understood because I'm the
Right,
same way. Like, I'm like,
right.
what are you talking about? And so we always had that. And so when we finally were like, okay, something is going on here besides what they're saying, because they were trying to paint him as oppositional defiant. And I was like, I'm the only mental health professional in this room. And that is not what this says. And I don't like that diagnosis anyway. in general for any child. But
Right.
so when we got his diagnosis, I was like, wait a minute, we're like the same person. And so it kind of gave validation for my parenting approach. And I know that it really gave validation to my husband for how we were parenting, because even though my parents were younger, we both grew up with the like, you know, be respectful. You don't talk back. You don't do this. You don't say how you're feeling. You don't do, you don't do those things. And we very much were raising our kids to like set boundaries. You don't have to give hugs. You don't have to do this or that. But I think that the diagnosis validated the approach, and it made us more comfortable in adjusting how we do things. And it made other people more open to the way that we're doing things, especially when we talk about the Black community and like their view of diagnoses. And I think I want to give credit to our Black and Brown communities because we've come a long way.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I love that you spoke about setting boundaries with children, because I remember like being a child and like people would say hello to me and sometimes I wouldn't speak back, or they'd want to hug me and I wouldn't want to hug them back. I was undiagnosed, at the time as a millennial. I was only diagnosed about 10 years ago, but autistic or non-autistic, I feel like children have the right to speak up if they do not want to be hugged, if they do not want to give kisses. So I love that you set boundaries with your children. I think more people need to do that.
100%. And for me, it was like, I always say it was this piece of me that certain things always felt wrong. Like, but it would be like, well, societally, you're supposed to do this. But I'm like, I don't
Hmm.
understand why you're supposed to do it, or it doesn't, I don't think that you should have to do it. And I'm not a very touchy-feely person.
Me
Um,
either.
and so as I gave my oldest his voice, I feel like made him feel comfortable to have a voice, because my youngest is my ADHDer. And he has a voice. He's gonna tell you, and he doesn't care. Um, but as my oldest became more comfortable, like it would be things like, an older lady would like, oh, he's so cute, and da, 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 blah, blah, blah. Hi, how are you? And I'd be like, say hi. And one day he just told me, he was like, Mommy, when strangers say hi to me, I don't want to say hi to them. It makes me uncomfortable. And I don't like it when you tell me to say hi. And I was like, noted. And I never did it again. And it was
Yeah,
just like,
right.
I was like, I could see that because I don't like it either. So I was like, but societally, it's like, you're being rude. Oh no, so I had to like kind of shift my mindset with that as well.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so unfair for society to say that we're being rude, because even now as an adult, sometimes people speak to me and I don't want to say hi, and it's nothing they did, it's nothing personal. I'm not being malicious, and most of the time I am with my dad, and he's like, she's not going to say hi to you, or he just gives them a little a little like warning, precaution. She's like, they're like, do you think that she'll speak to me? And he's like, probably not. So I always say this, I'm like, social media is probably the most social you'll ever see me, and even sometimes that can be a lot. But it is unfair that society makes you believe that you have to give affection and you have to like talk to people and engage in conversation. If it's uncomfortable for us, then why do we have to do it?
That part. And I think what you speak to too is like what I see a lot with like my families I support in special education and IEPs and things like that. A lot of times I'll see comments online from grown adults who are just like, well, I'm not always comfortable with everything I have to do either, but I have to do it. And I'm like, and that's society's problem.
Exactly, exactly. And people who come on my page with bullshit like that, I block them so fast, because you are not going to be in my space making anything chaotic for me. I already have anxiety and you are not going to add to that. But that is a big problem. People feel like their experience is the right experience, and that's not the case at all.
100%, 100%. And I'm sure you've seen in some of my posts, I put in the I put in the caption immediately, I'm like, and don't get on my page. Because I
No, I
someone
feel that. I
someone that
feel that.
we have to be preemptive because you already know what the comments are going to be, because it's not like it's like a new topic. It's just something
Yeah,
that you're like
exactly.
passionate about talking about in that moment. And so I just go ahead for some of them and just go ahead and say like, you'll get deleted, it'll get blocked.
That I Yes, I do that too. Especially like when I used to really be on Twitter, I'm like, before anybody comes on my posts, just know that the block button is my best friend and you will get blocked because I don't have time for that. This is my page. And I don't like when people come to my page and they comment on your stuff and they're like, well, you should have touched on this too. Well, how about you put that on your page because that's what you have a page for. If you feel that passionate about this topic, post it on your page and you make some content about what you're passionate about. So sometimes social media can be a lot. I mean, I love making connections. Like, I'm really glad that we're in communication and that we made a connection on social media. But some people, I'm just like, oh my God, I need a break.
So true. So true.
Yeah, I don't get it. But let me stop rambling about social media and get into the next question. In what ways did your child's diagnosis push you into becoming a stronger advocate more than you might have expected to be?
Yeah, so I would tell everyone I went into, even having been in the public school system as a mental health professional, having mother and sister that are educators. I mean, my mom's been an educator for like 30 years. Um,
Hmm.
and she's been at all levels, early childhood, early child and elementary. She likes the littles. But I very much was like, school staff works really hard and do this and do that. And, you need to be collaborative. And I just have this perception that if you communicate and you collaborate, then that's the key to your child's support. And what you don't factor in is that some people don't care.
Right.
And some people just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of the school system is compliance based. There's a lot of built-in ableism and racism. There's a
Yes.
lot of stereotypes and prejudice and bias that drive their approach, which leads to seclusion, restraint, discrimination. Um, and I apologize to I should have said trigger warning, which is, that's something that my son experienced personally. And it did have an impact on the entire family. And so what the interesting thing was even though we're in a predominantly white area, right? We were in the state of Louisiana. Louisiana has got a lot of black people. And so I sought out a black clinical and educational psychologist. And there was two women and they were like, hey, we're going to collaborate with you with the school so that we don't repeat testing. We just do the testing that we need based on the testing that they do and get him, figure out what's going on. But like from day one, she was like, have you thought about autism? And I am not afraid to tell everyone, I had a very stereotyped view of how autism presented. Mind you, I worked with children my whole career. And
I
so,
feel that.
yeah, like I was like, no, like, no, anxiety, yeah, I'm not sure what else is going on there. Like I was like, perfectionism, like, but autism? And then I get the form and I'm filling it out and I always say like those stereotypical like casebook presentation that you think of. I was like, no, no,
Yes.
no. Then I get to the other parts and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. But then I'm also like, but I do that too. What does that mean? Like, what are you
Right.
saying? So I
I
think
feel that.
how I already was advocating was from that mental health standpoint. Like I would say I had the benefit of knowing my child. I had the
Hmm.
benefit of seeing him as just this amazing person capable of so many things. And I think that we got his diagnosis when we needed to get it. He was diagnosed right before he turned 6. And I think that helped us not limit based on societal perception what he was capable of. And so once we received his diagnosis for us, it was just like, oh, now we know how to support him.
When they told me that I was autistic, I was like, no, I'm not. You guys don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, that shit's for white people. So I did not believe it when they told me that I was autistic. So when you said that, I was like, wow, like somebody understands. It wasn't just, and I wasn't being racist. Traditionally the face of autism is not a black woman. So I wasn't being racist. It was just ignorance. And I just did not know. But culturally also things are different for us being autistic. What advice would you give to Black parents and Black grandparents who are just beginning the journey of supporting an autistic child?
I mean, I think it's like listen and learn, right? I think one of the hardest things that you step into once you learn about autism, and I see this a lot in the Black and Brown community on social media, which makes me grateful for all the virtual connections because I'm seeing a lot of families find their support through virtual connections is
Yes.
like listen and learn and support. One of the hardest things is for family to see, to have one perception of your child or you, and it's not the same perception of behind closed doors. And so because of that, they invalidate and discount what you know to be your situation. And that's very difficult. And everyone doesn't get the opportunity to see it all. Like my dad, he's military, he was retired now, and he made it a point every month to come see because his job gave him that ability. He made it a month a priority every month to come visit and see his grandkids. But
Wow.
because of that, no matter where we lived, but because of that, he actually saw like the autistic meltdowns. He actually
Wow.
saw that. And so he knows and he knew when we were like, we're having a hard time. It's a hard time. He got to witness that. Whereas my mother never got to see that. And so it helped him have conversations with her about like, I know what they're talking about because I saw like we literally one time my husband was like, maybe if your dad came up to the school and talked to him, and this is pre-diagnosis, so we were still trying to figure out what's going on, that it would help.
Yeah.
So my dad got to see all of the full glory. And so he knew what we meant when we said like it's a hard time and they're struggling and there's this or that. But my parents also know, and I get it from them, but also I've never had the issue where I know a lot of Black and brown families do where it's like, well, my parents are not supportive or they don't understand or they say like sideways things because my parents raised me to be like, you either gonna get on board or you gonna get off the train. So I very much was that person. I was like, you're gonna get on board or you're gonna get off the train when it comes to how we're supporting him and what he needs.
Do you have any recent projects that you would like to share with our audience?
So I have the Affirming Village podcast that I do with fellow advocate and former educator Lisa Baskin Wright.
Hmm.
And essentially it was an idea that I came up with. And I was like, I don't think there's anything out there like this. Just talking about special education support from an affirming standpoint. And you have a mental health therapist on one side who's also a parent of two young children who is Black, and who is a mental health professional and autistic and ADHD. And then you have Lisa, who is white. Both of her children are grown now. So her last one just went out the house and is at college. She's a former educator and she's ADHD and dyslexic.
Wow.
So, we're like, that would be a unique approach to bring to it. And we don't hold bars. So we talk about the stereotypes, the bias, the prejudice,
Yeah.
and the racism that's all weaved out through there. So that that's really what I'm wanting to get out there and to kind of help change the narrative for our special education learners.
That's amazing. So everybody make sure you check out the new podcast. And what would you want people to know and take away from this interview?
That regardless of, because I don't prescribe to levels, but regardless of levels of the learner, like they deserve to be affirmed, supported, validated, and understood. And don't let their diagnosis be how you determine what they're capable of accomplishing.
Yeah. And I think that it's important for a lot of parents to hear that, a lot of parents and a lot of educators. So you have one of the best and one of my favorite Instagrams out there. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I love your Instagram as well.
Thank you.
Um, You can find me on Instagram at Destiny Huff _ IEP _ advocate. You can find me on Facebook at Destiny Huff Consulting. And then you can find me on www.destinyhuffconsulting.com.
Great. So everybody make sure you go follow her. You will learn something. And if you don't need the information, I'm sure you know somebody that does need the information. So thank you so much, Destiny, for sharing your powerful story and wisdom with us today. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Black Girl Diagnosed. Your presence and support mean everything. And until next time, take care and keep advocating with love.